Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. Iran and Saudi Arabia have resumed their diplomatic relations after the gap of 7 years. They reached an agreement after 4 days of talks in Beijing, with the top security officials from both Iran and Saudi Arabia were in attendance. And China played a pivotal role in brokering this agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Now, according to the trilateral statement which was issued after this particular agreement, both will reopen their embassies and missions within a period not exceeding 2 months, and both have also agreed affirmation of the respect of the sovereignty of the states and non-interference in the internal affairs of the states. Both have also agreed to implement security cooperation agreement and also general agreement for cooperation signed between the two earlier. Also, now many countries have welcomed and appreciated this particular step. The countries include Russia, Turkey, Iran, Oman, Egypt, Qatar. The EU also has appreciated and welcomed this particular step, as well as the United Nations has also appreciated this step. Now, when we specifically talk about the United States, apparently so, it has also welcomed this step. However, the White House spokesperson John Kirby downplaying China's role in this particular agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia. When we specifically talk about Israel, the opposition in Israel and the critics have termed this particular agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia as a failure of Israel's foreign policy. Specifically talking about Pakistan, Pakistan has welcomed this particular step, commending China's role, with Foreign Affairs saying that we hope this positive steps would define a template for regional cooperation and harmony. In today's program, we are going to look at this particular agreement and how far-reaching an impact it is going to have on the region, especially on the Muslim world, and also we'll try to understand China's increasing influence and role in peacemaking and diplomacy on the global stage, and is there any threat in future from the peace spoilers? As far as we have seen that not welcoming and downplaying China's role, the statement came from the US, as well as the kind of statement that has come from Israel. And to understand all this, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Riffat Hussain. He is a strategic analyst. Dr. Riffat Hussain, thank you very much for taking time out. We really appreciate that. And we are also honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Naveed Aman Khan. He is expert foreign affairs. Mr. Khan, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. We're also honored to have been joined in the studio by Brigadier retired Raashid Wali Janjua. He is Director, Islamabad Policy Research Institute. Brigadier Janjua, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Riffat Hussain. Quite a historic development. Was it surprising? Was something going on behind the closed doors earlier? Because there are a number of other countries besides China, Oman and Iraq, who have also played a pivotal role in this particular resumption of diplomatic ties between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Jawad. There are a couple of things that I would like to point out. In terms of being a surprise for us, I think all the capitals were surprised by this development, largely because they knew that both the top security officials from Iran and Saudi Arabia have been invited to Beijing, but Beijing was keeping mum about it, and there were no disclosures that were leaked to the press. So that's one aspect of it. And the second is the China's role has been acknowledged, has been explicitly encouraged by Pakistan and by many other countries, and this marks the beginning of the Chinese full-fledged diplomacy in the Middle East, because you will recall that about a year ago, Xi Jinping, when he attended during his visit to Saudi Arabia, he attended the GC summit, and that was the context in which the ball was set rolling for China to play a very important role. And thirdly, I think this development is a positive development, and Pakistan should welcome it as it has, and nobody should hold any grudge against the Chinese diplomacy. It's a triumph for the Chinese diplomacy, because there were many attempts, as you mentioned, in the past by Oman. There were 5 rounds of talks that were held in Iraq, but none of them produced this breakthrough. So I think it goes to the credit of the Chinese diplomacy that they have engineered this diplomatic coup, and the region should be very happy about it, notwithstanding some of the reservations that you mentioned have been voiced by Washington. And finally, I would say this, that this agreement also marks the beginning of a truly historic transformation of the Middle East that's in the works.
Right, Mr. Naveed, what's your take regarding quite a historical development, as we have seen, as Dr. Riffat Hussain has also mentioned, there have been a number of rounds of talks between the two countries, but none came to the fruition. So it gives us a glimpse regarding that influence of the Chinese diplomacy in making that happen.
Yes, Jawad, in fact, to understand all this matter, we need to understand the philosophy of China and the philosophy of America. The Chinese philosophy led by Xi Jinping, the president of China, and the American philosophy led by the American presidents and two political parties. China, in fact, sells harmony, love, and prosperity, while America goes for destruction, for arms, for death, and for poverty in the region. It suits to America. This is a significant development in the region, not only around Pakistan, but also in the Gulf, in the entire world. China's impact has been enhanced by the positive and strong diplomacy of Xi Jinping and the China as a country. It will have positive impact on CPEC, because China, after investing on CPEC, has gone to Iran and has invested around $40 billion in Iran. China believes in development, and to protect this CPEC, they decided to go to Iran and involve Iran in this route, because they believe that those powers like India and the other powers who were not interested in the development of Pakistan and in the prosperity of CPEC, they wanted to sabotage it. But China, once they have invested initially $25 billion and then over $60 billion in CPEC, they decided to save all this investment and to entangle and to encircle the entire world, especially the African countries, the European countries. That is why they went for this dialogue, and this dialogue successfully has proved in significant success. They have turned the enmity in amity, and it's a serious setback to America and Israel. The Middle East, in fact, will be very happy because of all this development. But on the other hand, one thing is very important, that again America and Israel will be thinking of sabotaging it. So
I'll come to Mr. Naveed. I'll come to that particular aspect of this whole equation also. Brigadier Janjua, let me quote Mr. John Kirby here. He has also welcomed this particular development, but at the same time, he has apparently he seems to be downplaying China's role in it. He says that White House believes internal and external pressure, including effective Saudi deterrence against attacks from Iran or its proxies, ultimately brought Tehran on the table. We all know that the United States of America had been trying to contain China, but this particular influence that China has used in brokering this particular agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So don't you think there is a huge setback to that policy of containment of China? Because on the face of it, China's influence has expanded rather than being contained.
Yeah, I entirely agree. It is a setback, and it is in fact economics trumping the geopolitics. That's the new reality. If some global protagonist does not understand that, I think they will do that at their own peril. You see, Saudi Arabia and China, they have very close financial and trading ties, and China is the largest trading partner, $87.9 billion US trade. And China is the largest trading partner of Iran as well. There its amount is minuscule compared to China and Saudi Arabia, $15 billion only. And the trade is tilted in favor of China in case of Iran, and in case of Saudi-China equation tilted in favor of Saudi Arabia. So this is the kind of clout that has created the right kind of leverages to allow China to put into practice its concept of global security initiative. Now, the global security initiative is a credo by Xi Jinping, and that is premised upon security and stability leads to development, and development leads to prosperity. And the prosperity, development is the right of the whole world, and the fundamental causes of the conflicts have to be addressed to create a win-win formulation. So that's the Chinese philosophy. We heard Xi Jinping, Chinese People's Congress, speaking that China would develop its army into a wall of steel. So that on the surface appears a little aggressive, but therein lies the policy of defensive concept, that they want to ensure that the security umbrella not only extends to China but to its allies as well. So the global security initiative and global development initiative, the twins, they are conjoined twins in the new Chinese philosophy. And I think this Chinese economic clout and its desire to shape the new regional security architecture in the Middle East in sync with its goals of global security initiative. So that was what clinched this deal, and it is for the first time that China has actually actively mediated, because the earlier Chinese policy was not of active mediation between two contending powers. So I think for both angles it is important.
Brigadier Janjua, that's a very pertinent point, and I'll take that point to Dr. Riffat Hussain. Also, we have seen China never acting directly when it comes to the issues in the Middle East. This time around, and it was never the party to any of the conflict in the Middle Eastern region. So with this particular agreement, what do you think? I mean, how much it would irk the United States in the future as well, and also when it was not the party to any conflict in the Middle Eastern region. So it clearly establishes the neutrality of China as a peace broker.
Not only neutrality of China, but also a proactive role by the Chinese diplomats and Chinese diplomacy, which we have seen in this case. We must also appreciate the constraints on China, which forced China to look toward the Middle East, particularly the oil-rich countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia, with which they have maintained an excellent relationship, and that relationship continues to broaden and continues to deepen. But I should also mention this, that the Chinese primary interest in both Iran and Saudi Arabia is the energy security, because the overwhelming supply of energies come from these two countries, and China realizes that they cannot leave this area alone to the mercy of the Americans, and the Americans have not been playing a fair game when it comes to the Middle East, because they have practiced a form of diplomacy which was mentioned by Naveed Saab, which essentially means that they want to divide up the region. But the Chinese are for the first time they are trying to unite the region, and they are trying to bring the two traditional protagonists come to some sort of an understanding, and it is to the credit of the Chinese diplomacy that they have managed to achieve this fiat. But I should also mention this, that it opens up a plethora of opportunities for the Chinese to play a firm role. For example, there is already a talk of the war in Yemen coming to benefit from this rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and there is also the mention of the sectarian divide, which has unfortunately has kept the Middle Eastern countries from playing a unified role. They have those divides are also going to come to an end, and this also marks the beginning of a new initiative, new look by President Raisi, because he has displayed enormous wisdom and pragmatism in trying to cut a deal with the Saudis. But previously, and then also I think we should give a lot of credit to the diplomacy by MBS, Mohammed bin Sultan, the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, that he has played a very important role. So all these elements have been brought together, and to the exclusion of the only country which is not very happy is the United States and its satellite state, which is the state of Israel. So I think this momentous development augurs well for peace and security in the region overall.
And you also mentioned that primary focus of the Chinese would be the energy security.
Yes.
But of course, it's going to offer the Middle Eastern region for a lot of new vistas and avenues also, especially when we talk about the Belt and Road Initiative. So that establishes the fact that it's going to be a win-win situation for all the stakeholders.
Well, yes, of course. That has been the Chinese mantra for ever since they launched the Belt and Road Initiative way back in 2013. Starting from Jakarta and onwards, that has been the Chinese wish and Chinese desire and Chinese design, that they would like to work for the regional benefit, and they want to minimize the conflict and the conflict potential that existed between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Not very long time ago, the Saudi leadership had openly talked of, supporting Israel's perpetrated attack against the Iranian nuclear facilities. But with this rapprochement, that possibility is now ever receding possibility, and that's not going to come into play.
Right, Mr. Naveed, your take regarding Chinese neutrality, does it not clearly establishes more trust among the other parties who are in a conflict, and when such party which is not the part of the dispute, already it comes and mediates, so that naturally enhances the trust level among the contending parties?
Absolutely right. China is now a tested partner for the entire world. This development has proved that China is a reliable partner, and for the solution of different disputes in the entire world, the different parties will be thinking of having the mediation of China as a very, very serious partner, as a very, very serious a big nation of the world. Chinese this development has have very, very strong impact on Kashmir as well. Once the Middle Eastern matters are solved, the impact on Palestine, Syria, Lebanon will be in control because of this collective effort. Definitely the Kashmir issue will be highlighted and will be having very, very strong support from China, and China will be in the position to mediate and solve it. America, though, have always been saying that America is ready to mediate, but since America is not very seriously involved in the mediation and in the solution of Kashmir issue in the region, now if as Iran and Saudi has solved this issue, Pakistan and India can also solve this issue of Kashmir in the region. So the role of China in the entire world as a mediator, as a superpower, as an recently emerging superpower is now acknowledged and is a truth of the time.
Right, Brigadier Janjua, we have also seen expression of the desire of the leaders of various other countries, particularly when we talk about the Russia and Ukraine conflict, and the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has also expressed the desire to visit Beijing and have that meeting with President Xi Jinping also. So, and with this particular agreement, don't you think there is a larger understanding globally about that very trust and confidence in China's leadership role?
Of course, it's quite obvious. You see, there are two competing models at play. One is that of interlocking competing security alliances like Quad, Indo-Pacific, IFEC, which is in fact a variant of Quad, which seek to contain, which seek to put premium on security, which seek to promote more militaristic strategy to contain. And there's another model which is Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership model. BRI is one small component of that. RCEP is much bigger initiative, and that is of bringing all countries within an economic union and with a win-win formulation: trade partnerships, economic linkages, global security, development for all. So those are two overarching competing models, and in which the countries of the world now have started displaying a kind of war weariness, conflict weariness, so to speak. Iran also has been a victim of sanctions regime since long, and the people, society, and you saw the agitation from Feb and 2 months into that, and actually ostensibly hardline president like Raisi, he was also compelled to yield to some of the demands of the agitators. So there is a groundswell of desire amongst the population, and same goes for Saudi Arabia. So they are finding a natural partner in China, which offers them an opportunity of economic linkages, rather than conflict, wars, and debilitating arms conflicts. So I think therein lies, and even amongst Israel, which was a centerpiece of security architecture of USA in the Middle East, now there is some consternation. The Israeli Prime Minister was in Japan, and he gave a statement that we are trying to recast our relationship with Saudi Arabia and Iran, but it came as a surprise, and his opposition Benning and Lapid, they have started questioning him that probably you took your eyes off the ball from this security dynamics, and that is why serious setback. That's of course a setback for Israel, that the two protagonists
from within the country as
so
well.
they have patched up amongst. So these are the overall consequences of a policy that is premised upon development, peace partnerships, and it offers the dividends of peace and economic connectivity. So everybody would plump for that.
Right. So, Dr. Hussain, don't you think there should be a realization among the Israeli authorities about the dividends of this regional connectivity and economic cooperation as also the peace and stability in the larger region?
Yeah, of course, it goes without saying that the Israeli leadership must display the wisdom and must have the prudence and have the long-term view of how to fix this relationship. But unfortunately, Likud and the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, they are committed to pursuing a policy of confrontation with Iran. And as a consequence of that policy, and the architect of that policy was none other than Martin Indyk, who has served for a very long time inside Tel Aviv. And he has recently remarked that this rapprochement, this burgeoning rapprochement, the long-term implications are going to be very, very detrimental to Israeli security interests. So there are voices which are being expressed inside Israel, which take a hard line, but the problem that Mr. Netanyahu faces is that there are no takers for this for this policy of violence, and there are increasingly opponent, there have been peace demonstration inside Israel, and the Netanyahu's attempt to subjugate the Israeli judiciary to the power of the executive has also led to a tremendous amount of alienation against his rule. So Netanyahu, he may have a hardline agenda, but he would have a problem trying to implement this agenda, given the way the winds of change have begun to blow in the Middle East.
Right, Mr. Naveed, when I'll come to you. When the critics and the opposition in Israel says that it is this particular deal or agreement is a failure of Israel's foreign policy, what does that mean?
In fact, Israel and America, they believe in divide and rule, and they were focusing that in Middle East and in Gulf, Iran and Saudi should be having head-on collision all the time. So they were very comfortable with this situation. It suits to them, both of them. Now, within Israel, Netanyahu is on defensive mode. He is under pressure within the Israeli country, and from outside the world, from the other countries, again Israel is on defensive now, because the pressure is now on Israel. This is now the test of Iran and Saudi Arabia. They need to develop and have consensus on one agenda, that they will have one policy regarding Palestine and Middle East. If America and Israel sabotage this peace process, this harmony, this love, this amity, they should not go for two different sort of statements in different directions, reflecting that they are once again divided. So now it is the test of both of the countries, and both of the countries need to learn politics or the political way from China.
So with the Chinese backing this time around, there are a number of issues that need to be resolved between the two countries when it comes to the crisis in Yemen, Syria, and a host of other issues also, and when it comes to the Iran's nuclear deal also. So when we talk about the Iran's nuclear deal and its stalled negotiations with the world major powers, so with this agreement, are there any hopes that there could be a resumption, and Saudi Arabia could also play a positive role in making the major world powers come to the negotiating table with Iran?
Definitely. I would say that again, it will be very wise from both of the countries that they should have consensus on different topics and different issues. They should not confront, and they should not go the contradictory for contradictory statements. I'm very much convinced that Saudi Arabia will also play very, very strong, very, very important role in this regard as well. As far as Iranian position is concerned, Iran has been in sanctions, under sanctions for almost more than 4 decades. But the credit goes to Iranian nation. Because of all those sanctions, they did not fall, and they kept on standing. And now they are in the position to have very strong and very, very successful negotiations with Saudi Arabia on the same level, on the same. We would say that without any issue, under the leadership or under the umbrella of China.
Right, Brigadier Janjua, what's your take regarding this Iran nuclear deal with the world major world powers? Do you think after this agreement, there are chances that the United States authorities are going to consider resuming the stalled nuclear talks with Iran?
I would regard that with cautious optimism, because many initiative in the past has withered on the vine similarly. And JCPOA, the 2 conditions which have still not been conceded by Iran, one was that they demand that the Iran's missile program should be, the question, and the Middle East policy. So Iran said that both these points, our missile program is for our national security, our Middle East policy is our sole preserve, so please do not venture into that. And there the process stalled, so it has not begun. And why I said with a cautious optimism, because there has been a bonhomie between Saudi Arabia and Iran in the past also. Even in 1990s, Hashmi Rafsanjani, he was also a hardliner, but he opened up to Saudi Arabia, mended the ties, but still after some time the ties went into a roller coaster down mode. And there are fundamental conflicts, JCPOA you mentioned. If it does not get clinched and the nuclear program is resumed, then the Saudi Arabia also would feel very concerned, because they have some legitimate security concerns when it comes to the Middle East nuclearization. And then there is a fundamental cleavage between expanding of the revolution, which to defend the revolution they believe in expanding it. Saudi Arabia is a monarchy, Iran deposed a monarchy. So those fundamental angularities and cleavages and the schisms remain, and I think we should tread very carefully and encourage Iran within our diplomatic capacity to get this JCPOA deal finally done, because therein, if the deal is done, then the reasons for continual animosity and pressure by Israel and by implication then the United States would also cease. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Right, Dr. Riffat, your take regarding JCPOA.
Well, JCPOA, I take a slightly different tack on it, because if you look at the director of IAEA, who recently visited Tehran, and after that, he issued a very positive statement that Iran has assured the international community, which actually was a one way of putting it, that the other European countries, including Germany and Russia, and also including China, has assured them of its desire to maintain a peaceful nuclear program. And I think that agreement, that statement from the director IAEA played a very important role in trying to send out a message that, even though, according to some estimates that I have seen in the international press, even the Iranians have tried to enrich their uranium up to 83.3%. So they are only a short step away from having a full-fledged enrichment uranium capability, which can help them make them the bomb. But the important message that comes out from Iran as a result of IAEA's meeting with the Iranian leaders is that Iran has no intention but to pursue a peaceful nuclear program, and that takes the wind out of the hawkish sails of Netanyahu, who has been saying that all the options, including the military option, is on the table if Iranians decide to take that step. And I think that message was also a message that was shared with the Saudi leadership, that if you want to pursue a peaceful nuclear program, Iran has no opposition to it, and and let's join hands as far as the peaceful development of the nuclear energy is concerned, so both countries can benefit from it. So I think that was something which played a very important role in trying to reassure the international community, and that may open the way to the resumption of GCPO talks.
Right. Now, coming to the European Union response, it has been positive. So, what lies ahead for the European Union out of this?
Well, it's up to the European countries, particularly the Germany and the other European countries, particularly France, that what sort of role would they like to play in trying to pressure the Washington to resume talks and GCPOA, and all the assurances that were held out, that have been held out by the Iranian government. I think that should count for much, and there is and GCPOA was one way of trying to keep Iran under sanctions. But as a result of this rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, that sanction option is no longer beneficial for the Americans. So the Americans have to come to the have come to accept the bitter truth that that you cannot keep a country which is suffering, which has suffered continually since 79 under sanctions for a very long time. So the sanctions are very much out, and the positivity that we see emerging in the case of Iranian efforts, and already I should mention it as a token that I've just seen the news that the Iranian currency, which was losing value against a dollar by God knows how many %, has actually stabilized now, and there has been an improvement in the value of Iranian currency by 21%. So that's a good sign.
And to add your words, sir, in fact, Iran has always been very cooperative to IAEA and the international inspectors regarding their nuclear programs. And if Iran goes, or any other Muslim country goes for any nuclear program, the program will be definitely in the 100% on for peace, not on hostility. It will not base on for hostility any longer. As far as Germany or France are concerned, they'll be very cooperative, I would say, in this regard, because whenever there is any hostile attitude or any firing or any aggression from Israel to Palestine or to Lebanon or Syria, the reaction from Europe, from France and from Germany in particular, has been very, very important on the public level as well. So that pressure will also be effective on and will be result oriented as far as the Israeli aggression is concerned.
So do we understand the policy under the President Joe Biden that didn't change much from that the policy under the Trump administration of maximum pressure and isolate Iran, and that has failed?
Definitely that has failed, and it will not work, I would say, because the policy of Xi Jinping and China will overlap that American policy, which has already failed. So the policy, the Chinese policy, is a successful policy and model. So we need to follow that model, and that model will work. That is working in China, and that will work in Pakistan and Iran. That will work in Middle East as well. So once we follow that, because we need to understand that philosophy which is being followed by Chinese president, that is prosperity, that is life, that is harmony. So we will have to take that agenda in the Middle East, will be successful, and America will be a step back.
Right. Brigadier Janjua, what the European countries take out of this particular agreement, especially when we talk about the major powers who are part of the JCPOA?
You see, European Union is traditionally has played a very positive role in JCPOA. The problems were because of the differences in the stances of Iran and United States in the past also, and the present also. So they'll be favorably inclined because there are economic dependencies also, as European Union has found in case of Ukraine war, how it impacts their economy. But there is a transatlantic partnership also, NATO, so that's a reality. We need to take due cognizance of that also. So those transatlantic political, geopolitical linkages cannot be counted out in this whatever pans out in the Middle East. And I'm still cautious, so we should be mindful of those drivers of conflict which are still intact. And that includes the proxies, the proxy warfare, the propensity, the predilection, because it's not, you can't switch off and switch on. And there's a whole logistic chain, there is a whole involvement, there are investments inside countries like Syria and Lebanon and Iraq. How far Iran pulls out, how quickly it pulls out, whether JCPOA becomes a success, what is the change in the overall orientation of Iranian policy makers, how Saudi Arabia responds, what happens in Yemen, because till October there was a ceasefire, and even after October the ceasefire is holding, perhaps because there is a desire on part of Iran not to stoke the fires of conflict any longer, and the Saudi Arabia is responding. So both, there are positives also and negatives. We should be cognizant of both realities.
So there's been a statement by Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson regarding the intra-Yemeni talks to find a political solution also. So that shows the positivity on the Iranian side. Likewise, you've just mentioned there is positivity on the Saudi side also. So the Houthi rebels in Yemen have also welcomed this agreement. So we do have the prospects of intra-Yemeni talks going positive in future. What's your take? Brigadier Janjua,
so I'm positive. Like I said, that there was a ceasefire that was till October, and even after the expiry of that ceasefire, we did not see any hostilities breaking out. So that is a very, very significant development. That means somebody is holding the hands of Houthi rebels not to escalate, and on the part of Saudi Arabia, that is they are also responding. So, and the statement of MBS also, where he wants to re-engage with Syria, he wants to find a solution to yes, Yemen problem, and this reconciliation. So I think the pieces are falling into place, and they are proceeding as per a vision, and the vision is of peace, connectivity, economic union, and staying away from the conflicts.
Right. Your take regarding its impact, this agreement's impact on Yemen and Syria in particular?
Well, I think the impact is going to be, it remains to be seen how the deal itself works out in terms of its dynamics, but my hope is that this is going to dampen the existing structure of conflict in the Middle East, whether that's the whether it involves Syria or Iraq or Yemen. But the most important thing, I think, which we have not focused on is the commitment on the part of both Iran and Saudi Arabia not to interfere in each other's internal affairs. And you would recall that that in 2019 there was a terrible attack which was attributed to Iran on the Aramco facility inside Saudi Arabia, and the Saudis, they were shaken by that event. So this kind of a commitment of non-interference in each other's internal affairs offers you an assurance by either side to respect each other's territorial sovereignty. So there is a existential element built into this agreement, and also I read somewhere in, because I haven't read the entire text, but there was a reference that all previous agreements which had been reached as a result of bilateral diplomacy between Iran and Saudi Arabia would also be observed in its entirety. So that, I think, sends a very positive message to both Iranians and the
one of those agreements is the agreement on general cooperation.
Yes,
right?
yes.
In terms of cooperation in economy, trade, and investment. Also.
One is 1998, which is the security, and then is the trade investment of 2001.
So lastly, how Pakistan can take benefit out of this, because of this particular agreement, and Pakistan happens to have close cordial relations with both the Muslim brotherly countries. Dr. Hussain, your quick take on that.
I think Pakistan should, as has already been said, Pakistan has welcomed this development, and Pakistan should take heart from the fact that China, with which Pakistan enjoys tremendous strategic relationship, has played such a key role, and Pakistan should encourage both Iran as well as Saudi Arabia, if they are having any second thoughts going against the spirit of this agreement. So that's something that Pakistan should not encourage at all.
Mr. Naveed, your quick take regarding this.
One, for the solution of Pakistan's issues like Kashmir, Pakistan needs to look towards China. Inshallah, I am hopeful that China will be in the position to mediate and to work for this cause. Number two, Pakistan and Iran, after this significant development, Pakistan-Iran economic development is very important, and we have seen this the visit of Minister for Energy to Iran. So energy issue, oil, gas, petrol, this trade will be opened in Pakistan and Iran. That will be a new window of development in Pakistan and Iran, and in Balochistan and Sindh in particular.
Brigadier Janjua, your quick take regarding what are the benefits for Pakistan?
I think the biggest benefit is a lot of diplomatic pressure has been taken off, because there were two estranged allies, and now they have patched up. I think a lot of pressure has been taken off Pakistan, and Pakistan should continue forging close economic linkages with Saudi Arabia, and also within the ambit of sanctions with Iran as well.
Right. Brigadier retired Raashid Wali Janjua, Director, Islamabad Policy Research Institute. Thank you very much for taking time out for views on news tonight. We really appreciate that. And Dr. Riffat Hussain, Strategic Analyst, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us. And Mr. Naveed Aman Khan, Expert Foreign Affairs, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us. We really appreciate that. And with that, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.